Welcome to Lovins Reads Lovecraft 5. The UAPA and an older organization, the National Amateur Press Association, which Lovecraft also later joined, was a relatively small group of amateur writers from around the country and a few from overseas who published small journals and circulated them to other members. Lovecraft found this intimate, non-threatening society exactly the cure for his social timidity, and he bombarded the journals of the UAPA with his contributions, chiefly poetry and essays. He published 13 issues of his own amateur journal, The Conservative, reflecting both his political and literary conservatism, as befitted one who felt he belonged in the 18th century. Gradually, however, Lovecraft allowed some of his early tales to be published, receiving encouragement from a few friends, notably W. Paul Cook. He began writing more. His discovery of the Irish fantasist Lord Dunsany in 1919 lent a tremendous impetus to his work, and Lovecraft produced a dozen or more imitations of the lapidary fantasy of his new idol. Up to this point, Lovecraft had no thought of professional publication of his work, but after two of his tales appeared in a crude semi-professional magazine entitled Home Brew, he was intrigued by the founding in 1923 of the pulp magazine Weird Tales. Several colleagues, including Clark Ashton Smith, the poet who would attain celebrity in the 1930s for fantasy tales of his own, urged him to contribute, and Lovecraft at last did so. His tales were readily accepted, and he soon became a fixture in the magazine. Indeed, in 1924, he was apparently asked to be its editor, but the job would have required relocation to Chicago, a move Lovecraft was, for several good reasons, not willing to make. One of those reasons had to do with the fact that he had recently married Sonia H. Green, a Russian Jewish immigrant who had joined the amateur movement in 1921. After a somewhat languid romance, they married and settled in Sonia's apartment in Brooklyn. However, troubles of various sorts beset the couple almost immediately, chief of them being a sudden deficiency of income as a result of Sonia's losing her position as a highly paid executive at a New York department store. She was forced to pursue a career as a milliner in the Midwest, leaving Lovecraft alone in a city whose immensity, modernity, and foreigners were so different from the placid, history-rich city of his birth. At last, Lovecraft decided for the sake of his sanity to return to Providence, and he did so in the spring of 1926. Where Sonia fit into these plans was not entirely clear. Sorry for the interruption. Let's see. At last, Lovecraft decided for the sake of his sanity to return to Providence, and he did so in the spring of 1926. Where Sonia fit into these plans was not entirely clear. Lovecraft's two aunts, who had nurtured him after the death of his mother in 1921, made it clear that they could not afford to have their nephew's wife be a tradeswoman in the town where they represented an informal aristocracy. Lovecraft acquiesced in this decision, and Sonia knew that the marriage was over. They divorced in 1929. At least Lovecraft got laid. Lovecraft's return to Providence unleashed a spate of writing such as he never experienced before or since. In 9 months, he produced such works as The Call of Cthulhu, The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, and The Color Out of Space. Lovecraft, by this time, perhaps as a result of working on a historical treatise, Supernatural Horror and Literature, had come to have quite definite ideas of the nature and purpose of what he called weird fiction. He outlined these ideas in a letter to Farnsworth Wright, editor of Weird Tales, in 1927. Now, all my tales are based on the fundamental premise that common human laws and interests and emotions have no validity or significance in the vast cosmos at large. To achieve the essence of real externality, whether of time or space or dimension, one must forget that such things as organic life, good and evil, love and hate, and all such local attributes of a negligible and temporary race called mankind have any existence at all. What this means is that Lovecraft, in a major departure from the previous horror tradition, and in many ways from the entire Western literary tradition, which habitually, if unconsciously, stressed the centrality of human beings to the cosmos, would emphasize the insignificance of humanity in a universe that appears to be boundless both in space and in time. He would do this chiefly by the depiction of immense entities called gods by human beings who cannot comprehend such creatures except by appeals to a deity from the farthest depths of space. It can be seen from this that Lovecraft was creating a fusion of supernatural horror with a new genre of science fiction. It is no accident that The Color Out of Space appeared in the pioneering science fiction pulp Amazing Stories. Well, that's good for today. Thanks for listening.